Good morning, everyone. This time, because it's my free day, I'm able to make um, these videos in the morning. I want to talk um, about foundations. Um, as you all know, every building is founded on a foundation, whether it's a villa or a apartment complex, or whether it's a skyscraper or a local shrine or temple. Every building has a foundation, and the foundation must be in harmony with the structure that will be built upon that foundation. The ground, the soil where the foundation is laid, must also be in harmony with the building. So why am I talking about buildings and foundations? I'm using them as a metaphor, as a parable here. Um, let me give an illustration here, just a small story, and you will understand what I'm aiming at. During the 16th century, Spain was a dominant economic power in Europe, and at the time, many of the Dutch companies were in debt to the Spanish government. The Netherlands itself was perceived as a colony of Spain. That does not mean that people were obliged to speak Spanish in the Netherlands or in this region. No, it was just seen as an exploitation colony of Spain economically. Practically, people spoke Dutch, people had their Dutch way of life, and Spain was down there in Spain. Well, at some point, the Dutch, and I'm saying the Dutch, how does it call them, the Dutch Masons, Freemasons, and those other cults, they became annoyed at the interference of the Spanish government. So they decided to rebel against the Spanish rulership, and they accused the Spanish government of causing spiritual unrest by enforcing Catholicism on the Dutch people, while most of the Dutch people were Protestant. So this led to the Dutch rebellion, the Dutch revolt, and it led to a war that lasted 80 years. That doesn't mean that 80 years after each other they were fighting every day. There was a pause of around 30 years somewhere, but they fought. But after 80 years, the successors of the Spanish king, against whom the Dutch leaders revolted, acknowledged the independence of the Netherlands, and they left the Netherlands alone, even though the Netherlands was already practically independent for a long time. But hold on. The Spanish kingdom, because Spain was just formed, was a collection of Celtic kingdoms, basically. The Spanish kingdom, which became Catholic by now, it overtook the Portuguese kingdom. The same king against whom the Dutch revolted later took over Portugal, but Portugal did not become a part of Spain. Portugal remained an independent country with the same king. So the Spanish began to use the Portuguese harbors and the Portuguese colonies. And now, what did the Dutch do as a consequence? They began to rob the Portuguese colonies to establish the Dutch colonial empire. Well, this led to more fights with Spain. And this also led to robberies of Spanish cargo in Americas and all of that. A long tension, and also Portugal was in a state of war with the Netherlands. But because the Netherlands had taken over so many of the Portuguese colonies, and because the Netherlands were the leaders of the Netherlands were quite strategic, the Portuguese nor the Spanish could stop them. And that's really what led to the foundation of what they call the Dutch nation. But if you look at it carefully, the whole foundation of that nation is an accusation against the Spanish, an accusation against King Philip II of Spain, which also became the King of Portugal. It's an accusation of spiritual abuse. Now, I'm not saying that there was no interference concerning Catholicism and all of that. But when you look at it, the whole foundation of the nation is accusation, and this accusation was acted out with assassination. How? The group, the leaders of the people that lived in what we today call the Netherlands, the population agreed with the accusation, and they selected their own young men to fight war against Spain. So they made a blood sacrifice of their own children to validate their accusation. And they also sacrificed their own children by sending them abroad on the oceans to rob Portuguese colonies. Many Dutch young men died. But that didn't concern the population in the Netherlands nor the leaders. They had their kingdom. They had their what they would call United Republic of the Netherlands. So what happened? Year after year, they would celebrate this revolt against Spain. And the anthem of the Netherlands begins with an accusation. I'm not going to sing the anthem of the Netherlands, because let me say this in general. An anthem of a nation is a declaration of an accusation. And that accusation will always lead to assassination. That means blood sacrifice. It means the group killing off its own members at their own hands, yet blaming it on an external party. And an anthem is a celebration of the blood sacrifice also. So, and with the celebration of the Dutch revolt against Spain, there are also parties who celebrate it, but there are also reenactments of the blood sacrifice. That doesn't mean that every time they celebrate it, they ritually sacrifice people, but they have plays and theater where they reenact the victimization of their own people at their own hands. So the foundation is accusation, there is assassination, and there's recreation. That means they have to ritually relive the original assassination and the original accusation. And the future generations, which are a part of that nation, are basically recreating the founding murders of that nation. Now, the thing about accusation, assassination, and recreation is that it won't last forever. In order for this structure to operate, people need to identify with the nation or with a long-term group. But what happened around 200 years after the Spanish Revolt? Things went bad economically. The banks and the governments of the United because we had autonomous provinces which formed the so-called republic, even though the republic was led by a prince. They didn't call themselves king, they called themselves princes, and those princes, they inherited their positions, so it wasn't a republic at all. Nevertheless, the government, the princes, and all those people, they wasted a lot of money. The population was suffering hunger. So there was a revolt that happened shortly after the French Revolution. After the French Revolution, many of the Dutch people realized, hold on a minute, why are we taking this abuse of those pirate families? So they revolted, and the Orange family left the Netherlands, they fled. You had the Batavian Republic that was declared, but there was no central government, there was no it still was a mess. It was far worse than before. And, well, what happened was the founding accusation and the founding assassination with recreation failed because recreation didn't work anymore. So the nation was in crisis. But there was a small pause. Napoleon took over France. He took over the Netherlands, installed his younger brother as king, and it was peaceful for a while. Afterwards, I'm making a long story short, Napoleon took over the Netherlands because his younger brother gave up his throne in the Netherlands. He left the Netherlands without saying anything, and later he let his older brother take over the place. And it was then that another revolt began. Because the former leader, which was Luigi Bonaparte, the younger brother of Napoleon, he identified as Dutch and he learned Dutch, so the people felt as if they had one of them over there. Now it was obvious that they were taken over by the French, and now they joined the Prussians and other German nations to fight against Napoleon. And, well, they did. So now there was another accusation, this time against the French. And they combined this together with the previous accusation against the Spaniards. And there was another founding blood sacrifice taking place. And afterwards, the Orange family returned, and the prince that should took over became the king of the Netherlands. And now it's 2016, it's 200 years later, and again, this place the Netherlands is in chaos again. But now, the founding myth of both the revolt against Spain and the revolt against Napoleon, it's not a myth because it never happened. It did happen, the revolt did happen, but it's a myth because it's covering up other stuff. The founding myths don't function well, so now there's chaos again in the community. But today there's another element going on. You have the Netherlands is part of the European Union, so they're not capable of enforcing their borders as a nation. In the past, they used to fight against their neighbors. Now they can't do that anymore. What am I trying to say with this illustration here? That every nation is founded on this foundation of accusation, which is manifested in assassination, and it is recreated over time. And as long as the recreation of the founding accusation, which is the founding myth, and the founding assassination, which are the founding murders, as long as they are recreated over and over again, the community has, because in the recreation, they select certain victims from the community upon which the community channels their negative energies. As long as there's a release, as long as there's an established sacrificial clause, often that's the working class, but it can be a class of rejected individuals or people that are denied access to taking part in the community, or it can be a group they label as foreigners. As long as you have those selected victims of the sacrificial class upon whom they can channel their tensions through the recreation of the founding myth, the accusation, and the founding murders, the assassinations, the nation is functioning. Society has an equilibrium. Everyone knows their place in it, and people remain content with their place. Because every time discontent happens, there's always this channeling of negative energy taking place. So, the foundation of the world basically is accusation. And who is called the accuser in scripture? Satan. So that's why Satan is called the prince of this world. And here's the thing. When they recreate the founding accusation with the founding murders, they do it covertly. That's what censorship is all about. Censorship is about censoring the violence and the cruelty, not only of the past but also of the present. People have to believe that when they channel their negative energies to the selected victims, that they are doing the right thing. They have to be validated in their stagnation. Because the moment the human mind recognizes, hold on a minute, this is wrong, the moment they are convicted, they can still do it, but it's always going to haunt them later on. That's why people are pressured to conform to society. And you have a lot of social constructs that are meant to validate this channeling of negative energy upon selected victims. But it's all censored. And this is what the gospel does. The gospel the gospel is not of this world. The gospel, therefore, is not founded on accusation. It's not operating by duality. The gospel, which is based on grace, there is no condemnation in it, exposes the founding accusation and also exposes the founding murders. And it's also revealing the scapegoating ritual that is religiously exercised repeatedly. And by doing that, it's making the world ineffective. Because don't get things twisted. The foundation of accusation with the assassination, which are the blood sacrifices, with the recreation, they work. They do generate a kind of peace. It's not real peace, but do generate a kind of peace that people are attached to. And this thick emotional tie within communities that's been generated by it, it's real. That's not something fake, it's real. But it's not lasting. It's a counterfeit of the real peace that only God can give. And here's another thing. That peace that the world is giving, which is not real peace, you don't have to repent. It's really a distraction of repentance. So I've used the history of the Netherlands as an example to explain this, but you can apply this to any nation. Why did the Irish leave the United Kingdom? Why? Because they had accusations against the King of England that they were taking advantage of the Irish. And I'm not saying that was not factual, because the English crown did take advantage of the Irish a lot. They did commit collective crimes against them. But the foundation was not that they wanted to be a joyous community. The foundation was accusation against the English government. And here's the thing. The Irish government, which was basically a replica of the English government, because the leaders of the Irish government were English, and many of the Irish people that became part in leadership reflected English values. After the independence, not much changed. That's why many Irish people, after the independence of Ireland, they fled to the United States. That's why you also have a high percentage of Caucasian Americans that are descended with Irish descent. So it was all founded on an accusation. Okay, or you can look, for example, at, well, why did the colonies revolt against England and became the United States? Also, there is accusation there. There are founding murders over there. Look, I can go on and on. That's why Christ is making clear that his kingdom is not of this world. And And I'm going to close with this. Whenever there is a founding accusation, there's always going to be an assassination sooner or later. That's how nations are formed. That's how enduring groups are formed also. And, well, I just wanted to point it out to you. I've already explained it in a previous video of mine, but in this video I'm explaining the structure of accusation, assassination, and recreation. And another term for recreation is entertainment. Entertainment is an established, it's not something people just do individually because they are bored. Entertainment is a socially established distraction to exhaust people emotionally, socially, and that means also financially, so that they won't have any resources to discover the bondage they're in, and so that they won't, let me say, act out against the community. Okay, I'm going to give another illustration before I close because this is important. Let me give a small illustration here. Let's say you have Billy. Billy is a soldier, and Billy lives in, I'm going back in time now, he is living in the Middle Ages at the time that the King of England was also the King of France. It was an Angevin Empire. And as an Englishman, he fought in France against the Caliphate, because every year you had terrorist attacks by Muslims in the south of France. And part of the deal of the King of England also being the King of France is that England would assist France in fighting terror. So Billy leaves towards the south of France and he's fighting over there. And, well, he was wounded in battle, but he recovered in a small French village. So after 4 years, he was sent home by the general. And when he arrived home, it was 5 years later. He left when he was 17. Now you can do the math. He was 22 when he returned. He received no honor, no acknowledgement, nothing for risking his life to defend England. And it was then that Billy began to recognize, hold on a minute, England is separated by the English Channel from France. England is separated from mainland Europe. It's a part of Britain. He knew that. So, and those attacks that happened in the south of France, they only happen in the Mediterranean. So people that live removed from the shores, they don't receive much of those terrorist attacks. And now, because Billy spent 5 years in France, he remembers that whenever there were attacks in the harbors or in the villages in the south of France, people that lived near the Atlantic coast, most of them didn't even knew those attacks were going on. Most of them couldn't even care less. And he also recognized that, hold on a minute, there's a trained army in the southeast of France that's well capable of dealing with those attacks. So he began to ask questions. Why in England do they spread this fear of a Muslim invasion while practically it's only happening in the Mediterranean? England shouldn't even be involved with fighting that threat because it's not even relevant practically for its citizens. So when Billy was back in England, he found a job as a cleaner at some farm. And it was then that Billy began to recognize, hold on a minute. Every year, hundreds of young men leave England to go fight in France. Those men are often men who are, well, those men, because they are gone, most of them die over there. They are expected to die. Only few return. Because of that, there are less men in the community, so there's less rivalry for women. There is therefore less responsibility there's less collective responsibility because a small portion of the population is dying off every year. And he began to notice that because there was a depletion of young men every year, that the red light districts in England profited from it. He recognized that it was profitable for the companies in England, especially the industrial region. And he also understood that in France, there are a lot of young men that think that in England they will have a better life. And each year, hundreds of men would settle on the south coast of England. They were not permitted to go further. They come to the south coast of England to work. And they would spend a lot of money over there with the hope that one day they would be accepted as Englishmen, which often doesn't happen. But the fact that there is an abundance of women, because a lot of men die off, because there are so many women that practically cannot get a husband equally because there are too few men, those women are used as a price for those men that come from the north of France. And this is both keeping the unwanted people from the poor, mostly are poor men that are unwanted in their French communities. Those people in France are now relieved from being responsible to those people. And at the same time, England is relieved from people they don't want to be responsible towards. So it was then that Billy began to realize, hold on a minute, I'm just a blood sacrifice over here. I was selected by my community to die because neither my father nor my grandfather nor any other people told me, Billy, don't do it. Don't go fight for England. It's a scam. Nobody told me the truth about it. They were willingly to let me die so that they could have their so-called peaceful England. Well, Billy was very upset because of it, but he recognized that, well, it's useless to fight in his own against this. And he just, after a few years, he returns back to France. He made some friends back in France and he lived over there. But there were people that returned back to England and they began to act out their anger against the English community for selecting them to die. And this led to serial rapists, because much of the men that returned back, they were denied marriage. So in order to act out their sexual frustration, they would rape people. Some would even go after some of the politicians to kill them. So the English government, after some decades, they realized we need to reinstall those men that return from battle to prevent them from taking revenge on us and on the community. So they developed a whole system of honor and prestige for those people that returned from battle. So when Billy was 8 years old, he heard of soldiers that returned back to England and they received welfare, they received small plots of land, and they were even preferred as marriage partners by the community. And Billy was thinking, what happened? Billy was 80 years at the time. Billy's grandson, which was a Frenchman, told him, "Grandpa, they've learned their lesson. They're only treating those victims so well to hide their own guilt for participating in the killing power." Well, this video has turned longer than I wanted, but I just want to take the time to explain this to you. The world is founded on accusation. That's why believers are not called to fit into the world. Yes, we are in the world. Yes, there are certain practical things of the world we comply with, like traffic signs. We have the laws of the land that we comply with, unless they go against the word. So if we are commanded to kill our fellow man, we just say we don't do that. And of course we are part of a human community still, so we are looking for the well-being of others. There are practical things that we comply with because we're in the world, but we are not of the world. So we're not giving in to everything. Well, now I really want to close this video down. If you have any questions, just ask them in the comment section. And when I have time, I may make some other videos now, but when I have time, I will respond to you. This being said, you all be blessed.